important. So we're going to be talking about some of the things, some of the misconceptions, and hopefully if you are one of the people who probably have these misconceptions, hopefully by the end of this video, hopefully you will have a different perspective. Well, Susie, what are the misconceptions that you've heard?
I've heard mental health means, or mental health problems mean I'm weak.
Right, yeah. And I think that's really important, especially since we're talking about this in the context of like Black community. You know, feeling weak or coming across weak is one of the things, because I don't know about you, but like Africans were like really taught, especially men, like they're really taught to be like, you know, be strong, you're the man, like don't cry,
be a man.
You know? So when you find that perhaps maybe within, you know, Black communities, the men, I can't really speak a lot for like Caribbean, because
I think it's similar.
You think it's similar? Because I can only speak from an African perspective, but I feel like it's similar.
Not really.
But I really feel like it's similar, that men are really taught to be quite, you know, boisterous and don't cry, and you are the man of the house.
You've got to be strong for everyone else.
You've got to be strong for everyone. And you can imagine the pressure that puts on a man, like especially if you imagine like a man that's working, he's got a family, he's got problems at work, he's having so much pressures at work, maybe there's things that he needs to do for his family, and there's all these pressures, but he's not allowed to express that himself, so there's a contradiction between what he's feeling and what his reality is, and what he's been taught, because what he's been taught is you need to deal with it, be a man and carry on. But then his reality is, I'm struggling, you know, I'm struggling with mood, I'm struggling with my thoughts, I'm struggling, but he can't really express that. So so that's one of the misconceptions, that mental health means that you're weak, and actually it's common, guys, and everyone is susceptible to it.
Everyone,
like no one is excluded from experiencing mental health problems, guys.
So some people feel that when they have been either diagnosed by a doctor as having a mental health problem, that it means that they're crazy, it means they can't cope, it means they're gonna have their job taken away from them, it means they're gonna have their children taken away from them, and actually that can be quite frightening. So for that reason, a lot of people don't seek help. Having a mental health problem does not mean you're crazy. It does not mean you can't cope. You can still hold down a job, you can still be a parent, you just might need that support to help you with those things. Right,
and how many people do you come across that usually kind of say that, you know, I think I'm going crazy, and that's a common thing, and I think that's not just perhaps in African Caribbean communities, but also just in general. You know, as a society in general, that's one of the stigmas, that I'm going crazy, or that person is crazy, and that's not necessarily true, because again, if we think about life in general, life experiences in general, and the difficulties and the challenges that you face, and sometimes you will feel low, and sometimes you'll struggle, and that's really normal, guys. And sometimes again, because of trauma, maybe you're experiencing things and you can't make sense of them, right? And I guess that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about, like some symptoms that you probably feel yourself and you're experiencing yourself, and you're thinking, am I going crazy?
Because you don't understand
what's really going on.
People often say, or completely ignore, when young children or young people say that they feel quite depressed or they feel really anxious, and just maybe dismiss them, and so they're not necessarily taken very seriously, which then can cause the mental health problem to become worse over time, because it's not being attended to.
And I think that's really valid in terms of how, again, sometimes you can have parents who you may not understand the behavior in your child or a young person, a teenager or someone in adolescence, you know, you even have kids as young as the ages of 7 to 11 attempting suicide, right? And that's really saddening. And sometimes you have family members who don't understand, and even after maybe perhaps someone has expressed that they're struggling with mental health problems, the family don't know how to talk about it. They don't know how to address it. And again, that can be quite detrimental to that person's mental health. So I think that understanding that also kids and young people can and do experience mental health problems is really important in terms of helping people that we love and helping our own children. And I think for parents also to understand, you know, certain behaviors like self-harm, you know, that's a sign of maybe there's something going on, and how to address that and how to deal with that, which for any parent that is difficult. Right? So I guess we're not here trying to say that it's something that's easy or simple. It's actually difficult for a parent to see their child probably in a difficult state where they're self-harming and they themselves don't understand it.
And it can provoke emotions for the parents.
Actually,
like you said.
think about is in this society that we live in right now, the generation that we live in right now, there's so much pressure on young people. And one of the things that I usually say is, yes guys, maybe I shouldn't share my age, but but I one of the things that I usually say is that I'm actually really glad that I was a teenager in a completely different era. Like, you know, those 90s era of I wanna be down. Like, I'm so glad I grew up in that era, because obviously there was no social media. There's some pressures. Don't get me wrong, there's good things about social media, because right now we're able to share our own experiences and some tips with you guys, but it comes with its own pressures as well, and that can lead to mental health problems. So it's very, very, you know, it's very common to see young people going through mental health problems, and actually the suicide rate in young people is quite high. So young people do experience mental health. So have you ever had someone like say to you, you know what, don't worry about it, or just snap out of it, like,
relax,
or
calm down,
or just calm down, or relax, or it's not that serious, or like, I think that's one of the things that kind of deter people as well from seeking help, or just coming forward and saying this is what I'm struggling with, because it's minimized to just be like, okay, snap out of it, like it's something that you can just easily snap out of, especially if you've gone through, for example, if you've gone through trauma, you can't just snap out of it. There's something that there's happening to your brain at the same time. You can't just be like, okay, snap out of it.
I think, as Debbie's mentioned, that is a big factor as to why people don't seek help, because they then start to believe that they should be able to snap out of it.
Right, and I think also to add what you said, if someone says to you, snap out of it, it goes back to that misconception that you're weak, right? It adds to that, because why are you struggling with this? You should be able to snap out of it. So if I'm not able to do that, what does that say about me? Does that say that I'm weak, kind of thing? So it goes back to feed into that other misconception that we talked about. Absolutely.
Okay, another one of these misconceptions that we've come across is that black people don't suffer from mental health problems.
That's a lie.
For real, it is a lie, because actually mental health impacts on everyone. So why would a certain culture be exempt from experiencing difficulties? It just doesn't make sense.
But actually, I'm trying to think of, like, I grew up in Kenya, for example, and you had people who suffered from mental health problems, and those people were like left out on the streets, and you'd see people, and these are cases like schizophrenia, bipolar, and you know, like, they'd be left out on the streets. So the perception that you had of people who were struggling with mental health problems, it wasn't good. Like, the way they were like perceived, it wasn't good. So that's why this whole idea of mental health problems means you're crazy, that's where this comes from. And actually, maybe perhaps when we talk about mental health problems, people just necessarily go straight into the extreme, like when you talk about
you can experience.
Right, and actually, to be fair, these people who were out in the streets, and it's because no one understood what they were going through. There was no medication, because I genuinely believe that if they had the medication, then they'd live like a normal life like everyone else, right? So I think that comes from that, whereas perhaps the older generation, like our parents, you know, of course they were brought up in their countries that they were from, so they kind of have these beliefs, which parents, you know, they transfer beliefs, or they teach beliefs, or whatever it is to their own kids, right? So this whole idea of black people or people from other ethnic minority groups don't suffer from mental health problems. We do, because depression is a mental health problem, and that's something that most people will experience at some point in their life.